I am Indian, for those that don't know. You know, some people have said I looked Hispanic throughout my entire life, and I was like, really? Hispanic? Really? There's this kid named Rico. If anyone watched Hannah Montana, there's a little kid named Rico back in 2007. Everyone said I looked like him, and I think he was Cuban or something like that. And I think I did kind of look like him when I was little. But I'm Indian. My parents were born in New Delhi, India. I don't know if it was exactly New Delhi, but they're from New Delhi, India. I was born in America. My sister, fun fact, was also born in India. So I'm the only one in our family that could actually become the president of the United States of America. Not saying that I want to be. I probably could win it if I wanted to. Like if I really tried, I could easily be the president. But like, I want to build a $1 billion company. I don't want to be the president. So, you know, ambitions, priorities, stuff like that. Anyway, I was born in India. I was born in America. My parents were born in India. I'm from India. I've loved India very dearly since I've gotten to visit. I haven't gone since 2019. Hopefully, I might have to go in November for a friend's wedding. But I just love India, right? I love everything about it. I love the culture. I love the smell. Now, granted, I don't live there, so I get to be there for 2 weeks and like be on a fairy tale. But nonetheless, I love India, right? It means a lot to me. And hopefully one day I get to expand my startup into India if we ever get that big. That would be super cool to have an office in India. Having said that, I don't really like Apple. And I don't really like Apple because they're just not that interesting to me as a company. And I may have a little bit of an outside opinion here, but I don't think Apple really has that much going for them outside of the fact that they have the strongest brand in the world. Now that matters, but when you talk about valuations, they're a $2.5 trillion company. You know, the market didn't let them get to $180, which would make them a $3 trillion company. They had a run up since COVID in 2020. If you got in at COVID prices, that's been amazing. But I don't think the car for Apple is going to be a thing. I don't think fintech is going to be a thing, right? This 4% interest rate stuff you're getting in the banks is going to go away as the market gets better, right? So like, I don't think that's long-term sustainable. I don't think the watches are interesting. The AirPods are interesting. I really don't think the phones are interesting. I mean, I haven't upgraded in 2 years, probably won't upgrade for another year because like, why, right? And I don't think the headphones or the overly priced headphones are interesting. I do think the chips on the computers are interesting, and I think services and maybe their advertising revenue is interesting, but a lot of other stuff I don't think is interesting. And I would challenge people to kind of give me what is your overarching S-curve for Apple. Again, it's almost a $3 trillion company, 7.5% of the S&P. For them to keep going higher and higher, people have to keep buying that stock, assuming there's going to be more and more growth. And sometimes that doesn't happen. This is when we see the transition from companies to be value stocks. Now, I can never imagine a brand like Apple doing that because they constantly innovate. They constantly find another way. But it would be hard to see what new products they come out with. I think Apple is doing something different when it comes to their growth. And that growth is tied to getting into markets where they have a lot of products they haven't sold yet. So instead of making brand new products, they'll just sell those products to a consumer base that hasn't had access to buy it. That could absolutely get Apple to a $5 trillion company if you get the right amount of people to buy shit that they have never been bought before, which is why Tim Cook and Apple just opened their first store in India. This is a big, big deal for Apple. This is the first store in India on Tuesday in a significant milestone after the iPhone maker roughly 25 years after entering the South Asian market. During his trip, Cook has planned meetings with prominent business leaders, as well as Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as Apple steps up his battle against Samsung over the luxury smartphone market in Asia's second biggest economy. The first one, obviously, being China. Now, Samsung has 28% of market share in the world for cell phones. Apple has 27%. India, given I'm from there, and I've been to India, the number one thing Indians use outside of WhatsApp is Samsung Android phones. I mean, those phones are like, they're deep in that market. Like, and because, you know, the average iPhone costs a lot of money. So like the average Samsung phone is like basically nothing, right? It's free. So Android has a grapple hold in India. That's why Google is so popular in India. YouTube's so popular in India because guess who owns Android? Google, and YouTube becomes pre-installed on every phone, right? So deep, deep, deep market penetration. The U.S. Giant's first official store and a second retail location is scheduled to open in New Delhi on Thursday, coming at a time when the Apple is ramping up its manufacturing drive in India, hoping to turn one of the world's largest smartphone markets into a key global iPhone assembling hub. Apple's iPhones currently assume less than 5% of the Indian market, but the share has grown in recent years as more Indians buy premium handsets because, you know, there's an Indian middle class that is forming. The opening of Apple's 20,000 square foot store in the Reliance-owned high-end shopping mall in the finance capital Mumbai, this is basically like Hollywood, Los Angeles for India, attracted hundreds of people who queued to see Cook on the glass doors. The other thing about Indians is that they really do look up to CEOs and entrepreneurs. They don't like demonize them. like we do in the United States. They actually, want them to be successful. So if you're, an American CEO, you're going to get a lot of praise. That's what Jeff Bezos got a ton of praise when he came to India as Amazon Prime was opening up its markets here. According to JP Morgan analysts, Apple is expected to expand its manufacturing capacity in India to produce 25% of all iPhones by 2025. Tim Cook says that Apple, our mission is to enrich lives. India has such a beautiful culture and incredible energy. And we're excited to build on our long-standing history, supporting our customers, investing in local communities, blah, 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 blah. Okay. What actually matters here? It's very simple. What actually matters here is China is not up their ass anymore. And China is currently still up their ass. And in order to get them off their ass, they got to find a new ass to hop on that's less shitty, literally and metaphorically, than China's ass. So China and the geopolitical tensions that's going on, if China invades Taiwan tomorrow, Apple has to stop manufacturing. There's just no way Apple can say, yep, we will continue manufacturing in a country that has denied the sovereignty of another country and is killing millions of civilians. Because the precedent that sends geopolitically is, hey, we're okay with that, right? Like that would have to be Apple saying we are okay with the CCP, like taking over another country's land. So when they want to go past Taiwan, when they want to do it to another country, Apple's like, they're okay with it. There's no precedent. That's why when Russia invaded Ukraine, every company had to leave Russia. Netflix, Spotify, Pepsi, all of these guys, they had to leave because they were like, we can't tolerate this, right? And it's not like a woke cancel culture. It's like, no, we actually can't tolerate this. Like, this is just not going to happen. The stuff that's going on in China proposes a major supply chain risk for Apple. It's another bear case on Apple, because if this stuff does happen, and it's not something you can say has a 0% chance of happening. I mean, the people of Taiwan know. They did a 60 Minutes interview. They're like, this is going to happen. This is not a joke. Like, this is happening. And so I think Apple is like, where is a skilled labor force or an unskilled labor force that is willing to work for cheap, that we can train very quickly, that we can get a majority of our manufacturing in the next 10 years inside of that country, build out our operations, our supply chains, all that stuff. For those that don't know about Tim Cook's history, Steve Jobs in 2000, when one of the second versions of the iMac came out, knew that they would sell like 100 million units. And he was like, we need the supply chains to be able to fulfill the demand. That's when Tim Cook really became the COO of Apple. There's a good documentary I watched on this by John Coogan on YouTube. He told Apple to go to China and get the job done. And Tim Cook went to China. He talked with a bunch of people. That's when they started their relationships with Foxconn. And they created such a deep integrated relationship with China that has really beholden them to China, but it's been so damn efficient for shareholders in terms of the ability for them to create such meaningful market value in terms of getting their products out there, which has showed that Apple's never had a supply chain problem, right? Because demand was always there. They were always able to fulfill it. In the year of 2000, they shipped out hundreds of millions of iMacs. And that started a very beautiful journey for them to succeed in China. The problem is China is getting politically unstable. And so I think India is a massive growth market, just because not that many people know about the Apple brand because they're so exposed to other manufacturers like Samsung. Not that many people can afford an iPhone. So if India just makes a cheaper version of like the iPhone 11 and makes it, something like, you just need people to buy the phone at this point, right? Because Apple's going to upsell them on like a $20 per month, music and health and fitness. Like, Apple can make so much money on the back end if they just get them tied into the ecosystem. And if you have them tied into the ecosystem, you've got the iMac, the iPad, all of these things that make your iPhone and your day-to-day life more efficient, more effective. You need that integration, right? And so if Apple can just get people getting iPhones, because not only are they being manufactured there is less political turmoil. The brand is increasing there. There's 1.4 billion people. Less than 5% of them even know what an iPhone really is, or have really, held onto it and used it in a way that's meaningful. Apple has a really big shot of expanding there. So I am bullish on Apple going to India. I am not sure how quickly they can get the job done, because remember, in China, things are like that. People are trained. You've got your relationships. You've got your factories. You got everything. To set up all of that in the course of even 2 years in India, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of investment in the country. And it's going to take a lot of meetings of Tim Cook going back to India every single, I would imagine, quarter to try to get that done like he was doing in China. So, I mean, we'll see if that happens. Obviously, super bullish if they can get the job done. But I'm not a buyer of Apple stock. I'm just not a buyer of Apple stock. At $180, they're a $3 trillion company. I don't know if they get to be a $3 trillion company. Yes, the market needs to get better. Yes, interest rates need to go down. Yes, they're 7.5% of the S&P. Yes, they have the world's best brand, but they are not creating anything that is S-curve oriented. They're just not. They're not even really in the AI space. Now, I forgot to mention the VR shit. Look, I don't even know if Facebook's VR shit is going to work. And if Facebook's VR shit is not going to work, I don't know if Apple's VR shit. So VR, I'm also not bullish on. I also just don't think people are going to spend a lot of their time in VR every single day like they do on the phone. And if you don't have people spending time in the VR, they're not going to buy it, and app developers are not going to be excited to produce applications for the VR headsets. So I'm also not excited about that. We have Worldwide Developers Conference coming in 2023 in June, so a month away. It'll be exciting to see what they announce. I just don't know if it's going to, necessarily change everything. Yes, they have incredible pricing power. Yes, they have a lot of different moats, and I mentioned all of them over the past couple of minutes. But I'm not looking for a moat. We know that. I'm looking for the S curve to get Apple to be a $6 trillion company from a 2. Now, maybe in the next couple of years, inflation, $6 trillion is actually the new trillion. But still, at the end of the day, you got to have some products that are selling like hotcakes to get to that level. And it's okay if they don't. They've done a lot. They've created $3 trillion of market value. It's hard to keep going. Like, I would bet on Microsoft over Apple any day of the week, because Microsoft's doing shit with AI. Microsoft's doing shit with software programming. Microsoft's doing shit in the gaming sector. Like, Apple should have bought Netflix by now. Apple should have bought Tesla. Like, all these things for them to expand, which when you become a bigger company, you can't expand internally as easily as you can externally by subsuming competition, right, in different sectors, and then just building out parts and subsidiaries of your business that operate. Like, imagine if Apple bought Goldman Sachs. This would never happen. I was actually talking to a friend the other day who's working in the banking space. And he's like, it could happen. They wouldn't do it, but like theoretically, the cash and everything to be able to be done, it might not even bring up an antitrust issue, even though I think it would. But like, imagine if they bought a bank, right? And now they're in the banking sector, and now they have assets under management. I mean, there's so much stuff Apple can do, but Tim Cook hasn't really shown that they would be able to do that. Amit is dead on for this topic. Kane, thank you. I appreciate that. That I'm not dead on every topic, but I appreciate that. The proliferation of smartphones is decimating rural culture in America. The young people no longer want to stay and do the work or learn the baseline skills. It is a serious problem facing the U.S. Now, one of the things that is interesting about this comment, I don't necessarily agree that the proliferation of smartphones is destroying rural culture, because I think a lot of those people in the rural parts of America now have access to democratized opportunities in the context of the information age, the IT age, and the content creation age that allows them to do more outside of live a rural life. But what you're saying, Ty, is really interesting, because if AI, I was talking to someone last night who's an investigator for the government in the biopharma space, and he said AI is going to take my job very soon. He says, because I work for the government, it might take 20 years, but like, because the government's slow, but AI is going to take everybody's job. So what's going to be interesting is that the people who work in rural culture, and, I know plumbers are not rural culture or whatever, but using like these blue collar jobs as a metaphor, that stuff might just become way more valuable at the end of the day than a lot of the technological stuff if that stuff gets commoditized by AI. So that's going to be really interesting to see what happens as the proliferation of smartphones and increasing of technology leads to other skills that are more traditional still becoming more valuable at the end of the day. And so it's going to be very interesting. I'm surprised Apple phones aren't 100% robot made. Well, that might happen with AI soon enough. I mean, if you can start making cars with robots, you should be able to make, iPhones with robots. That's why Tesla is so efficient with their supply chain as well. So we'll see if that can happen. India is certainly a huge addressable market. However, BRICS, India is the I in BRICS. Those states are an increasingly powerful anti-Western bloc. This is also a very, very good point to bring up. Look, the reason no one gives India shit for buying Russian oil is because America needs an ally in Southeast Asia, and we don't have a lot of them, right? You need a hedge against China when it comes to Asia, when it comes to the continent of Asia, and India is that hedge. So India and Russia being friendly, we kind of overlook it because India is the second world's biggest democracy, right, outside of the United States. They have a great relationship with us, and there's a lot of business to be done there. And also, they got 1.4 billion people. You need to feed them. You need energy for them. And so if you're going to get cheap oil, you got to get cheap oil. So no one gives India shit because India is this emerging economy that's like every company wants a little bit of, and America doesn't want to isolate them. But they're also a democracy, and they fought hard for their democracy, and they believe in democracy, even though, yes, there is corruption, but they're a democracy. And look, if you believe in the West, you believe in democratic values. And increasingly more and more every day as I grow older, I see how much, including myself, take how many people take for granted the idea of democracy and Western values. It's as fragile as a group of people one day waking up believing that it's just not real, having that ideology spread across the world, and then boom, you're living under authoritarian and totalitarian control. I'm not trying to be a fear monger here. I'm just like talking about the harsh nature of what the world was like before we believed in Western values and freedoms. These are good things, right? And I know the East is more nuanced than that. I'm not saying India or China's totalitarian and all that stuff, even though some parts of their life are very totalitarian. But there is a beauty to individualism and Western values, and it's something we should protect. And India believes in that stuff, and that's why we don't give them any shit for doing the stuff that they do. So we'll see if Apple can expand in India. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on what can be done, and if India is the growth sector for Apple to become a multi-trillion-dollar company going into the future.